Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a truly eye-opening, honestly kind of shocking phenomenon, the sudden and dramatic collapse of Gen Z's mental health. We're diving into Jonathan Haidt's The Anxious Generation, which reveals how a profound and almost invisible shift in the way our kids grow up changed absolutely everything. We're going to look at the hard data behind the massive rise in anxiety and depression and how trading a traditional play-based childhood for a phone-based one literally rewired an entire generation. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this with a massive thought experiment. Just imagine for a second that a visionary billionaire chose your 10-year-old to join the first permanent settlement on Mars. They're begging you to go. But then you realize something crucial. Absolutely no one has done any research on how the high radiation or the low gravity up there will affect your child's developing bones, their heart, or their brain. So, would you send them? I mean, of course not. It's a completely insane idea to endanger a developing child without understanding the long-term biological and psychological effects, right?
Well, Mars isn't actually a planet in this context. It's Haidt's metaphor for the phone-based childhood we've seamlessly, almost accidentally, forced upon Generation Z. And the tech companies, they're the corporations in this scenario, just racing to capture human attention, acting without any real regard for child development. They essentially launched young people into an entirely untested, completely alien environment just to beat out their rivals.
To understand how we actually got here, we have to look at what Haidt calls the Great Rewiring. We start with the arrival of the iPhone in 2007. Then, we rapidly see the introduction of viral mechanics, the like and share buttons in 2009. By 2010, we get front-facing cameras, and then the explosive rise of visually curated platforms when Instagram was acquired in 2012. By 2015, Gen Z was fully, totally immersed. And here is the deeply concerning part. This exact period perfectly syncs up with a massive, synchronized international spike in adolescent anxiety and depression. It marks the definitive transition from a play-based childhood to a phone-based one. This rewiring, introduced with Haidt, identifies as the four foundational harms. When teenagers' social lives moved onto smartphones, their face-to-face time with friends completely plummeted. They became socially deprived. They became sleep-deprived from late-night scrolling, their attention was chronically fragmented by constant pinging notifications, and they ultimately fell into behavioral addiction. If you want to understand modern teenage exhaustion and loneliness, well, these four harms are the absolute root of the problem.
So the crucial point is, just like the immune system needs exposure to germs to get stronger, human children require a concept called anti-fragility. They actually need to face small-scale challenges, take physical risks, and resolve conflicts during unsupervised free play. This kind of play acts like an inoculation against anxiety. It builds resilience, but when childhood moved indoors and online, that vital natural inoculation was completely lost. Let's contrast these two environments because the differences are stark. Real-world interaction is embodied. You're physically there, reading facial expressions and body language. It's synchronous, happening in real time. And because it happens in real physical communities, you actually have to work to repair relationships when you make a mistake. Virtual world interaction, on the other hand, is completely disembodied. It's heavily asynchronous, and relationships are often totally disposable because the bar for entry and exit is just so incredibly low. Simply put, human brains evolved for the synchronous, embodied reality of Earth, not the disembodied, asynchronous gravity of this digital Mars.
This brings us to how the brain actually operates. A healthy, play-based childhood puts a developing brain into discover mode, feeling secure, exploring, and ready to learn and grow. But modern society has created this bizarre paradox. We relentlessly overprotect kids in the real physical world, stripping away their independence while simultaneously completely underprotecting them in the virtual world. This specific, strange combination traps their developing brains in a permanent defend mode. They're constantly scanning for threats, highly anxious, and deeply risk-averse.
Section 1. The Gender Divide: How Social Media Harms Girls. The Great Rewiring impacted everyone, obviously, but smartphones completely splintered the adolescent experience along gender lines. When given smartphones, boys gravitated heavily toward multiplayer video games and sites like YouTube and Reddit. Girls, on the other hand, became heavy users of visually oriented sharing platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, Pinterest, and Tumblr. This funneled girls directly into highly intense, heavily visual social validation feedback loops that perfectly, almost surgically, targeted their developmental vulnerabilities.
Haidt's analysis shows exactly why social media is a unique trap for girls. First, visual social comparison pushes down their internal sociometer, basically their sense of self-worth, through endless perfectionism. Second, physical bullying gets replaced by 24/7 relational aggression and a very public cancel culture. Third, because girls more readily share emotions, anxiety literally becomes socially contagious online. It spreads like wildfire. And finally, a severe lack of guardrails dramatically increases their exposure to predators and sexual harassment from older men online. These platforms effectively hack girls' innate desire for communion and connection, turning it into a relentless and dangerously underprotected public performance.
And this brilliantly illustrates the severity of the issue. 3. Correlational data reveals that girls who spend 5 or more hours a day on social media are 3 times as likely to be clinically depressed as non-users. 3 times! It is a profound, measurable hit to their mental health.
Section 2. The Gender Divide. Why Boys Are Withdrawing.
Shifting focus to boys now. Boys have an evolved desire for agency, risk, and rough-and-tumble play within a stable pack of friends. But as the real world became more overprotected and supervised, tech companies stepped right in. They provided boys with incredibly easy, frictionless ways to satisfy these desires virtually, through immersive multiplayer gaming, virtual thrill-seeking, and easily accessible hardcore pornography. It satisfied their baseline psychological drives without requiring them to do the actual hard work of developing real-world transition skills.
7%. Now that might sound like a small number at first glance, but that is a staggering portion of the population completely sacrificing real life for a screen. Researchers estimate that about 7% of boys suffer substantial, real-world impairment directly from heavy video game usage. We're talking about giving up sleep, physical exercise, and crucial face-to-face interaction.
This severe withdrawal leads directly to what sociologists call a failure to launch. Instead of learning self-governance, mastering physical environments, and making the vital transition into adult responsibilities, many young men are simply getting trapped in their bedrooms. They're becoming deeply disconnected from the physical world around them.
Section 3. The Digital Oversight Paradox. Protecting Kids on Earth versus Mars.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the glaring historical paradox it shows. Think about it. We mandate seatbelts for cars and strictly enforce driving ages. We ban cigarette vending machines to force store clerks to verify IDs for tobacco. But for highly addictive behavioral engineering machines run by trillion-dollar tech companies, we rely on a flimsy, unverified checkbox that just asks, "Are you 13?" It is frankly completely absurd. Look at the stagnation of our oversight over the years. The primary law, COPPA, was written way back in 1998, establishing 13 as the age of internet adulthood, which was long before smartphones even existed. Then, through the 2010s, incredibly sophisticated algorithms were specifically designed to maximize engagement from vulnerable developing brains. And here we are today, amidst a massive mental health crisis, and U.S. federal laws have essentially remained unchanged since 1998. Legislation has utterly failed to keep up, leaving parents completely alone to fight trillion-dollar attention extraction algorithms.
Section 4. Solving the collective problem. Reclaiming childhood.
So how do we actually fix this? There is a way out of this trap. The reason parents feel so paralyzed right now is that this is a classic collective action problem. Right now, if one parent acts alone and takes away their kid's smartphone, they face the massive cost of socially isolating their child. It feels impossible as an individual. But if a group coordinates and acts together, that cost vanishes and everyone benefits. This isn't just an individual family issue, it's a structural issue that absolutely demands community coordination.
Haidt lays out 4 clear, actionable, coordinated steps communities can take right now. Number 1, delay smartphones until high school. Just give kids basic flip phones instead. Number 2, delay social media entirely until age 16. Number 3, implement completely phone-free schools from bell to bell. And number 4, actively encourage far more unsupervised free play and independence in the physical world. These aren't just arbitrary rules. They are essential guardrails to bring our kids' developing brains back into healthy discover mode.
Let's move to and see how this builds into this truly powerful thought from Haidt. Let children grow up on Earth first before sending them to Mars. It really perfectly connects back to our original thought experiment. We absolutely have to give them the synchronous, physical, play-based reality their brains actually need to develop resilience, long before we hand them a portal to an asynchronous, disembodied digital universe.
So the final provocative question I want to leave you with today is this. Are we ready to bring childhood back to Earth? Because it's not going to happen by parents acting in isolation. It requires us talking to our neighbors, our schools, and our communities to solve this collective action problem together. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Now go start those conversations.